Close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine walking into a building so vast, so filled with knowledge, that every answer humanity has ever sought is waiting for you somewhere on its shelves. A building where the mathematics of the universe, the secrets of the stars, the blueprints of machines not yet imagined, and the collected wisdom of every civilization on Earth all exist together under one magnificent roof. Now imagine that building never burned. Imagine that no flame ever touched its papyrus scrolls, no army ever threatened its walls, and no century of neglect ever silenced its scholars. Imagine that the Library of Alexandria simply continued growing, continued teaching, continued pushing human curiosity further and further toward the horizon. What kind of world would we be living in right now? How different would the streets outside your window look? How different would the sky above your city appear? Today, we're going to find out. Welcome to UNPAST, where history takes a different turn. To understand how different everything could have been, we first need to understand what the Library of Alexandria actually was, because most people, when they hear its name, picture a simple old building full of dusty scrolls. But that picture could not be further from the truth. The Library of Alexandria was not just a library. It was the ancient world's greatest center of human knowledge and scientific ambition. Built in the Egyptian city of Alexandria around 300 BC under the reign of Ptolemy I, it was designed from the very beginning to be something extraordinary. The goal was breathtakingly simple and breathtakingly ambitious at the same time. Collect every book ever written, every scroll from every civilization, every piece of knowledge from every corner of the known world, and bring it all to one place. And for a time, they came astonishingly close to achieving exactly that. Ships arriving in the harbor of Alexandria were boarded by royal officials who searched for any scrolls on board. Those scrolls were taken to the library, copied, and the copies were returned to the ships, while the originals stayed in Alexandria. At its peak, the library is estimated to have held somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 individual scrolls. To put that in perspective, that is a collection that would not be matched or surpassed in the Western world for over 1,000 years after its destruction. But what made the library truly extraordinary was not just the number of scrolls it held. It was what happened inside its walls. The library was attached to an institution called the Mausoleum, essentially the world's first research university. Scholars from across the Mediterranean world were invited to Alexandria, given free housing, free meals, and a salary paid directly by the Egyptian state, all so they could focus entirely on thinking, researching, and pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. And the results of that arrangement were staggering. Eratosthenes, working at the library, calculated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy over 2,000 years before modern instruments existed. Hipparchus developed the foundations of trigonometry. Euclid assembled the principles of geometry that engineers and architects still use today. Herophilus and Erasistratus performed the first systematic anatomical studies of the human body. Archimedes, though based in Syracuse, corresponded directly with the library scholars and built upon their work to develop principles of physics and engineering that were centuries ahead of their time. Hero of Alexandria, working in the city that grew around the library's influence, built a device called the Yalopile, a primitive steam-powered rotating sphere that was, in every meaningful sense, the world's first steam engine. He built it around 50 AD. The Industrial Revolution on our timeline did not arrive until roughly 1760 AD. That is a gap of over 1,700 years between the invention of the steam engine's core principle and its actual application to change the world. Now here is where our divergence begins. In our timeline, the library declined gradually through a combination of fires, political neglect, and shifting imperial priorities. The most famous fire, possibly connected to Julius Caesar's campaign in Alexandria in 48 BC, damaged a significant portion of the collection. Later damage came under Roman Emperor Aurelian, then under Theophilus in 391 AD, and the final remnants likely disappeared under the Arab conquest of 642 AD. By that point, the intellectual momentum the library had generated had been scattered, suppressed, and in many cases simply lost. But what if none of that happened? What if the library received consistent royal and later imperial protection? What if its scholars were never dispersed, its scrolls never burned, and its tradition of open inquiry never interrupted? What if Hero's steam sphere was not a curious novelty, but the beginning of a continuous engineering tradition that never stopped developing? Let us follow that thread and see exactly where it leads. By 200 AD, in our alternative timeline, the Library of Alexandria has grown beyond its original walls. Under continued Ptolemaic and later Roman patronage, the institution has expanded into a sprawling campus of interconnected buildings, lecture halls, laboratories, and workshops that cover an area equivalent to a small modern university district. The original library building has become the ceremonial and archival heart of a much larger intellectual complex, its shelves now holding over 2 million individual documents in multiple languages, including Greek, Latin, Egyptian, Persian, Sanskrit, and Chinese. The scholars working within its walls have by this point moved far beyond the achievements of our own timeline. The anatomical work begun by Herophilus has continued uninterrupted for 2 centuries, producing a detailed understanding of human physiology that in our world would not be achieved until the Renaissance period of the 15th and 16th centuries. Surgeons trained in Alexandria can perform procedures that our timeline's medieval physicians could not have imagined. Infection is not yet fully understood, but the systematic observation of patient outcomes has led Alexandrian physicians to develop strict cleanliness protocols that dramatically reduce post-surgical mortality. In engineering, the descendants of Hero's steam experiments have produced functioning steam-powered mills by 180 AD. These are not yet the thundering industrial engines of the 18th century, but they are real, working machines that use steam pressure to grind grain, pump water from mines and irrigation systems, and drive the bellows of metal forges. The Roman Empire, in this timeline, adopts these machines with characteristic enthusiasm. Roman engineers, already the finest builders and infrastructure developers in the ancient world, immediately recognize the potential of reliable mechanical power and begin integrating steam-powered pumps into their famous aqueduct systems, dramatically extending the reach and efficiency of water delivery to cities across the empire. By 300 AD, the pace of development is accelerating. A scholar named Thessalon of Alexandria, building on centuries of accumulated astronomical and mathematical knowledge, develops a comprehensive heliocentric model of the solar system that is not merely a philosophical position, but a mathematically precise, observationally verified system with predictive power. In our timeline, this achievement belongs to Copernicus in 1543 AD. In this timeline, it arrives 12 centuries earlier, and because it emerges from an institution with the resources and reputation of a library behind it, it does not face the kind of institutional religious resistance that nearly destroyed Galileo in our own history. Knowledge, in this timeline, has always been the supreme authority, and a well-supported mathematical argument is received as exactly that. The implications of early heliocentric astronomy ripple outward in ways that are difficult to fully measure. Navigation improves dramatically. Trade routes across the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, and eventually the Atlantic become more reliable and more ambitious. The economic prosperity generated by improved trade funnels more resources back into Alexandria, and the library's endowment grows with each generation. By 400 AD, Alexandria is the undisputed intellectual capital of the world, and the world is beginning to look genuinely different. Steam-powered machinery is now common in the larger cities of the Roman Empire. Roman factories, still small by later standards, produce textiles, metalwork, and ceramics at volumes that would have been unimaginable to the Republic-era Romans of 5 centuries earlier. A primitive telegraph system, using a network of semaphore towers enhanced with mechanically powered shutters, connects the major cities of the empire and allows messages to travel from Rome to Alexandria in under 2 days. The medical advances emanating from Alexandria are extending life expectancy in the cities of the Roman Empire. A crude but functional understanding of germ theory, developed through generations of careful observation rather than the microscopy that drove our own timeline's discovery, leads to improved sanitation practices in Roman cities. The great aqueducts are complemented by covered sewage systems that dramatically reduce the waterborne diseases that devastated urban populations in our own ancient world. And then we arrive at the year 500 AD. In our timeline, this is the early medieval period. The Western Roman Empire has already fallen. Europe is fragmenting into competing kingdoms. The accumulated knowledge of the ancient world is being slowly lost, preserved only in the scriptoria of isolated monasteries. The great engineering works of Rome are crumbling for lack of maintenance. It is, by almost any measure, a step backward for human civilization. In our alternative timeline, 500 AD looks nothing like this. The Roman Empire has not fallen. It has adapted. The economic productivity generated by 2 centuries of steam-assisted manufacturing has created a middle class of merchants, engineers, and skilled craftspeople whose economic power acts as a stabilizing force against the kind of political fragmentation that destroyed our timeline's empire. The barbarian migrations still occur, but rather than overrunning a weakening empire, the migrating peoples encounter a civilization with genuine technological and organizational advantages, and the result is gradual integration rather than conquest. In 500 AD, the first true industrial revolution begins. It begins, as all the great shifts before it did, in Alexandria. A scholar and engineer named Miriam of Carthage, one of the first women to hold a senior research position at the library, publishes a treatise describing a double-acting steam piston engine that converts the back-and-forth motion of steam pressure into continuous rotational force. This is, in all meaningful technical terms, equivalent to the Watt steam engine that powered our own industrial revolution in the 18th century. It arrives 1,260 years earlier. The impact is immediate and transformative. Within a generation, steam-powered factories are operating in Alexandria, Carthage, Rome, Constantinople, and Antioch. The production of iron and steel, already well developed in the Roman tradition, is transformed by steam-powered bellows and hammers that can work metal at scales and speeds no human workforce could match. Ship design advances rapidly as engineers apply steam power to maritime propulsion, producing the first steam-assisted vessels by 540 AD. These early steamships are hybrid designs, still carrying sails as backup, but their ability to make reliable headway against wind and current transforms oceanic navigation. By 600 AD, the alternative world is beginning to diverge from our timeline so dramatically that direct comparison becomes almost philosophical. The Roman Empire, now more accurately described as a Mediterranean confederation of allied states, has established permanent settlements on the West African coast. Explorers following the African coastline southward have reached the Cape of Good Hope by 580 AD, and the first contact between this alternative Roman civilization and the civilizations of East Africa and the Indian Ocean trade network produces an exchange of knowledge and resources that accelerates development on multiple continents simultaneously. In medicine, the 600s brings something that in our timeline would not arrive until 1796. A physician named Callista of Alexandria, building on centuries of accumulated immunological observation, develops the first systematic vaccination protocol, working with the documented observation that individuals who survived certain diseases never contracted them again, and combining this with the library's vast archive of medical case studies spanning 5 centuries, she develops a method of controlled exposure that confers immunity to several of the era's most deadly diseases. The population consequences are staggering. Cities that in our timeline were periodically devastated by plague remain healthy and growing. The demographic foundation for continued industrial and scientific expansion remains intact. By 700 AD, alternative Alexandria is a city of over 2 million people, the largest urban center in the world by a significant margin. Its streets are lit at night by gas lamps fed by a municipal gas distribution network. Steam-powered trams run along iron rails through its major thoroughfares. A mechanical computing device, based on principles first explored by the Antikythera mechanism and developed over centuries of mathematical refinement, performs complex astronomical and navigational calculations in the library's observatory. The 700s and 800s bring the development of electrical science. Scholars who in our timeline would have been natural philosophers constrained by the intellectual limitations of the medieval world are instead working in well-funded institutions with access to the entire accumulated scientific knowledge of 1,000 years of continuous research. The jump from steam power to electrical generation, which took our timeline roughly a century from the 1780s to the 1880s, takes alternative Alexandria's engineers approximately 60 years. By 760 AD, the first electrical generator is producing usable current. By 800 AD, electrical lighting is illuminating the library's reading rooms. By 900 AD, In our alternative timeline, the Mediterranean world has achieved a technological level broadly equivalent to our own early 20th century. Electrical grids power cities from Rome to Babylon. Internal combustion engines, developed from the steam engineering tradition, propel wheeled vehicles through the paved streets of a dozen major cities. Radio communication, developed from the electrical science of the previous century, connects the continents. The first heavier-than-air flying machines take to the skies over Alexandria in 923 AD, watched by a crowd of hundreds of thousands gathered along the shore of the Mediterranean. And the world beyond the Mediterranean has not been left behind. The alternative Roman civilization's expansion was never the violent conquest of our timeline's colonialism. It was instead driven by trade, by the spread of the library model, by the establishment of branch institutions in major cities across Africa, Asia, and eventually the Americas, reached by steam-powered vessels in the early 700s. These branch libraries carried not just books but the methodology of open inquiry, the tradition of building on previous knowledge rather than starting from scratch, and the institutional framework for funding and protecting scientific work. By 1000 AD, multiple independent civilizations on multiple continents are contributing to a genuinely global scientific conversation. The Mayan mathematical tradition, long the most sophisticated in the Americas, merges with the Mediterranean algebraic tradition to produce advances in mathematics that accelerate progress across every scientific field. African metallurgical expertise, already centuries ahead of European practice in our own timeline, combines with Mediterranean engineering to produce materials that our timeline would not develop until the industrial age. By 1200 AD, our alternative world has achieved something our own civilization has not yet managed in 2026. It has developed clean, reliable energy generation from sources that do not deplete or pollute. The electrical science that emerged in the 700s was never yoked to fossil fuels because the Industrial Revolution in this timeline occurred before coal-powered steam became the default energy source. Instead, the abundant Mediterranean sunshine, the reliable winds of the North African coast, and the powerful tidal forces of the Atlantic were harnessed first, establishing a renewable energy infrastructure that the later industrial expansion simply built upon rather than replacing. By 1500 AD, in our alternative timeline, human beings have walked on the moon. The space program that achieved this was not a Cold War competition between superpowers, but a multinational scientific project coordinated through a global network of research institutions descended from the Alexandrian model. The rocket technology that made it possible was developed not from weapons programs, as in our own timeline, but from the centuries-old tradition of Alexandrian engineering that always oriented its most ambitious projects toward exploration and understanding rather than destruction. And now, in 2026, what does the alternative world look like? It is a world of approximately 12 billion people, higher than our own timeline's 8 billion, because of the dramatically lower mortality rates produced by 15 centuries of continuous medical advancement. But it is not an overcrowded world, because the agricultural productivity generated by 15 centuries of continuous technological development feeds that population comfortably and sustainably. Hunger, in this world, is a historical phenomenon documented in archives but not experienced in living memory. It is a world where the concept of a developing nation does not exist because the Alexandrian model of knowledge, sharing, and institutional support spread the tools of development broadly and early enough that no region of the world was left generations behind. It is a world with a permanent human presence on Mars, established in the early 1900s of our alternative calendar. It is a world where the diseases that still kill millions in our own 2026 were defeated centuries ago. It is, in the most direct and measurable terms imaginable, a world that is approximately 500 years ahead of our own in every field of human endeavor. All because one building, in one city, on the shore of the Mediterranean Sea, was never burned. So here we are, standing at the edge of two realities. The world we actually live in, remarkable and beautiful as it is, and the world that might have been, 5 centuries further along the road that human curiosity has always wanted to travel. The Library of Alexandria was not just a building. It was an idea, the idea that knowledge should be gathered, protected, shared, and built upon. The idea that every discovery made by any human being anywhere in the world belongs to all of us, and that the fastest way to move forward is to make sure that no discovery is ever lost. We lost that idea for a while. We lost 1,000 years of potential progress to fragmentation, to conflict, to the burning of books and the silencing of scholars. But the idea never fully died. Every library ever built since Alexandria carries a fragment of that original vision. Every university, every research institution, every open access journal and collaborative scientific project is a small piece of what Alexandria tried to be. The question this timeline leaves us with is not really about the past. It is about right now. What knowledge are we failing to protect today? What discoveries are sitting in underfunded institutions, in the notebooks of researchers who cannot get grants, in the minds of brilliant people who never got the education they deserved? What is our Alexandria? And are we taking care of it? Think about that, and we will see you in the next timeline.